Dear friends, let's start our journey to discover the relics of St. Anthony, the best loved saint in the world, right here in front of his tomb in the Basilica of Saint Anthony in Padua, Italy. Ours will be a compelling journey in which we will have the opportunity to see all his most important relics. Every year, several million people come to this shrine to pray on his tomb, so that the saint may intercede for them with the Father who is in heaven. But now, let's go behind the altar tomb to take a closer look at the marble slab where the devotees lay their hands on as they pray to him. It is the moment when they wish to feel his presence. How many hands have touched this stone? How many prayers are addressed to the Saint of Padua? But what lies beyond this dark green marble slab? What do pilgrims come here to venerate? This slab separates us from the largest relic of St. Anthony, his body. The bones of the saint are recomposed in a crystal urn and placed on a pink velvet cushion. The crystal urn is then locked in an oak case. Many people in fairly recent years have had the opportunity to see St. Anthony's body during two expositions that took place, the first in 1981 for a total of 29 days and with an influx of 650,000 people, and the second in 2010 for 6 days only with an influx of more than 200,000 pilgrims. These two events provided further proof of the great love people have for our dear saint. But what is a relic? The term refers specifically to the mortal remains of a saint or a blessed, and in a broader sense, it also indicates objects used or touched by these people during their lives, or items that have come into contact with their mortal remains. Many people think that the devotion to relics as channels of God's grace began with Christianity. However, various traces of this practice can already be found in the Old Testament. For example, in the book of Exodus, we read how much Moses cherished the relics of the patriarch Joseph. However, in my personal opinion, the most sensational case is found in the second book of Kings. We are at the time of the prophets. Listen. And as a man was being buried, a band of marauders was seen, and the man was thrown into the grave of Elijah. And as soon as the man touched the bone of Elijah, he revived and stood on his feet. Just think of it. Merely by coming into contact with the bones of the prophet Elijah, that man came back to life. Extraordinary, isn't it? St. Anthony spent the last months of his life at Campo San Piero, a place not far from Padua. However, aware of his approaching death, he asked his fellow friars to take him back to Padua. He wanted to be buried in a small church under the care of the friars, dedicated to Mary, Mater Domini, Mother of the Lord. Unfortunately, Anthony was too sick and they couldn't actually reach the town, so they had to stop in Arcella, a small suburb just outside the city walls. And it was there that Anthony died on Friday, the 13th of June, 1231. A few days later, and exactly on the following Tuesday, in compliance with the last wishes of the saint, there was a solemn funeral attended by thousands and thousands of people. The long funeral procession, after winding through the streets of the city, reached the Church of Santa Maria, where the bishop celebrated a solemn Mass. Historians tell us that that Tuesday was truly memorable, a truly memorable day, not only because of the solemn burial of the saint, but also because of the great number of miracles performed by God at St. Anthony's tomb. That is why the people of Padua began to dedicate Tuesdays to Anthony's, and this practice quickly spread throughout the whole Catholic world. The saint was finally buried where he wished, in the Church of Santa Maria Mater Domini, which is precisely the place where I am now, this one. In fact, when the great basilica was built, the church was incorporated into the larger building, and it became one of its many chapels. Of course, it is still dedicated to the Virgin Mary. But now let's go to pray at the tomb of the saint with the confidence that he will listen to our prayer with love. Dear Saint Anthony, you often found quiet moments in which to draw into communion with the Lord and thus fill your life with new spiritual strength. Please ensure that we too, in the midst of our busy lives, may find the presence of the Spirit in our hearts to accompany and guide us. Please, dear Saint Anthony, intercede for us. Amen.